This is episode 3 of Grappling with Coaching. I have an official name and everything. Thanks for coming on, Justin. I'm just going to give you the floor, I guess, to kind of let everyone know who you are. We can talk about how we met briefly and then get into it.
Yeah, I love that story of how we met. So I'll tell you that. Yeah, so I'm Justin. I am the sort of head coach and club manager for a little nonprofit gym. So I'm not an owner. I just run it. We run it as a board together as a nonprofit in Invermere. So we're Invermere Jiu-Jitsu, or MV Jiu-Jitsu is what we kind of prefer. I'm a black belt that I've very subtly thrown up behind me under Tim Blanchard in Calgary. So that's Alavanca. So Atos black belts. And who am I? I'm nobody. I'm some 50-year-old hobbyist, that had some athletics in my past and actually found jiu-jitsu because I wanted to stop playing rugby, in my 30s against 20-year-olds, and was like, what's grappling? And took it up from there. So I'm definitely a hobbyist, but like I have a background in some high performance sports, so I understand coaching and I guess my path, knowing because I was just an old guy doing jujitsu, that it was sort of more of a coaching path than a competitor path. Like I like competing and everything, but that's kind of my jam. So that's who I am now. So nobody dojo storm me if you don't like what I have to say. You can probably beat up on a 50-year-old 165 pound, maybe 170 pound right now, based on injuries and beer intake. Yeah, you can probably beat me up. Yeah, so that's who I am, and I also have this weird combination that like maybe we'll get back to later. That like I studied a lot of the philosophy of consciousness, of mind, of how we learn through a degree in formal logic and language, so how language operates in university while I was playing rugby, and did not at that time or for a long time put those two things together. I actually thought this sort of cognitive learning and motor learning were not related, which is kind of embarrassing now. I'm like, actually it's very related. And that a lot of that philosophy I sort of was up to like just before some of the that idea of like consciousness being an emergent thing and not necessarily a brain outward and separate, and the brain recreating reality, and then having to do things that way. That was sort of just right where we were, and decided not to pursue like a PhD or anything like that in it, although the department wanted me to, but I didn't. I went skiing instead is what I did. Moved to Whistler and did that sort of stuff and just kind of forgot about it. And then as I came back into this role and started coaching and started learning about what eco was and hearing how it applied to like how AI learns and animals learn and we learn, I was like, oh my God, I was already doing all this. I've got like this great background in it. I should be able to pick this up pretty quickly. So yeah, that's me. Oh, and I like omoplatas.
I remember when I came to your gym, there was a great debate on whether omoplatas existed or not.
Yeah. So there's a guy, Mike. He's a purple belt. He runs a club in Golden, and he should do better on his social media because he probably have more people there. He's a great guy, and he was definitely in a omoplatas don't exist phase. I kind of sort of agree. I mean, there are certainly, like all submissions, I think they're just all guards and control positions. And like, I don't know if you finish omoplatas all the time, but I use them to sweep, and they work pretty well. So I'm not like lying on the floor waiting for somebody to like whip their feet over top of me and be like, but I've got your arm. I'm trying to get up and use it as a sweep, and then, get that mounted triangle or whatever afterwards. So it seems to work. Oh yeah, I didn't tell the story too. I mean, you told it on the other podcast, but I'll say it again. It was good. So Dylan came to my gym as a visitor. I was just getting started with eco and had that thing where I was okay in class, but when new people would come, even if it was like, hey, first timer or whatever it is, or some parent coming to watch their kid, or like someone who knew jujitsu came over, I'd always have this like, oh, they're gonna, like, I want to take you aside and give you like a half hour diatribe on like everything I know about the omoplata. So he was like, look, I know I could tell you, but I'm not going to. It just looks like you don't know what you're doing, and you're just like, it's all sloppy and ugly. And so I'm kind of looking at you, and you take that as me giving kind of like side eye to you, and then I think you're doing it to me, but we're really both going like, oh, we're the same coach. We're both doing it. And that was really, really fun to discover that. And just like you were such a good like training partner for everybody. Such a like a intelligent grappler and good and going at that useful pace for everybody. And I was like, oh, new friend. So yeah. I didn't have to defend
Yeah,
my
no,
belt against you. You were just cool. I was like, great, thanks.
yeah, I really enjoyed my time there, and like I always say, like I want to get back out there, and we're for sure coming back out there because good gym, good culture, good coaching. Like, yeah, nothing but good things to say about your spot. So
Yeah, well, we'll have a
sure.
pretty fun thing going on in September for that first, like just after Labor Day. We haven't pinned down the exact days, but I'm bringing Rob Bernacki out and probably another coach to do sort of 3 or 4 day like immersion camp, but like vacation camp too. So including
Mhm.
like, some fun nighttime activities and getting out on the water and going wake surfing and hiking and mountain biking and doing that whole vacation kind of jujitsu retreat and trying that as a prototype here. The idea to go around to other great places in BC and do that sort of vacation. So we'll do a surf-based one in Tofino, I think, with Rob. We've talked about he does one. He was like interested in me taking it over if I want to kind of operate it in that way. And I
Mhm.
love being out in Tofino, and that's a good reason to go surf. So going to do that. Maybe a Whistler one. I have some ideas for how that might be done. So maybe one of those you might want to come out to or coach.
Yeah, that'd be sick. You're seeing more and more of these kind of vacation-y jujitsu type events coming up, and I know you've been talking about it for a while, and you definitely have a good location for it. So I'm excited to see what you can do with that.
Yeah, yeah, and then of course, anytime you guys should come out, should bring a whole crew.
Yeah, yeah. We keep talking about like 'cause we took down the little crew to Edmonton a while ago to visit Joey Bresky. He's another friend of mine.
Yeah,
Runs a good CLA program out there, right? And it was a blast. Took three other guys, and yeah, I like traveling with the crew. So
yeah. I just
see
saw.
if I can finagle some people to come.
Yeah, yeah. There's a new tournament that the club in Roslyn is doing in May. So we're gonna take Roslyn's like 5 hours from us, so it's farther than going to Calgary, but it is in the Kootenays, and so all those clubs, Cranbrook, hopefully Fernie, Creston, Castlegar, Golden, us. I think a lot of them will be there. Probably some from the other side too. I guess Kelowna will be a draw for that. So we're going to make a trip, get some of our kids to do their first tournament. I mean, I might be sandbagging because they're judo kids already, but it'll be their first jiu-jitsu.
But, yeah.
Just have to remind them to keep fighting once they're on the ground. And be like, no, you're not. You're not done. Keep. Uh,
Keep working.
Yeah, and then a few of us will go if I can be healthy. There's a couple black belts. Well, one that I would like to give a match to because he's a great guy, and it's hard to get matches in
Mhm.
rural BC. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, if I can be healthy, which is a challenge, but I'm not giving Coach
I feel
Kenny a
ya.
match though because he's at like 95 kilos, and I don't know if you've ever run into the Kenergy, but I'm not going to give Kenny much of a match, so I'm not going to do that. Yeah. But all those guys, like they all go to ADCCs, they go to all the provincials, they go to worlds. They're all pretty serious, even though it's all small town stuff. So that should be fun. Yeah. So the
Sick.
big question:
Mhm.
what is Greg Souders and Dylan working on in their room? Let me
Yeah. So
get my notes out.
it was pretty cool because we landed on Friday, and Greg landed on Friday, so we went out to Academy Eden Prairie,
Mm,
and they had an open mat there, and the owner there, Hayden, is kind of did like a mentorship under Greg, right? So it was really cool. I got to roll with Greg, got to pick his brain. Everyone out there who's saying that Greg is like very gracious with his time are absolutely correct. He just was very free with his time. So I got to pick his brain, and one of the questions I had for him was, I know previously he was working on the idea of metastability in his room, but I don't know how long ago that was, right? So I'm like, what are you currently working on in your room now that's new that people might not necessarily see yet, right? And he said phase transitions. So phase transitions basically just meaning like, okay, maybe we play some form of a stand-up game and we're putting them on the floor. And then maybe the next game is playing from a position where maybe you landed on the floor, right? But then combining those games,
Yeah.
right? So say it's a takedown and you put their hips on the floor, but if bottom player is able to get their hips back up, you keep playing. So it's like the gray area between the games that you're playing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, we're playing from, okay, standing, we're on the floor, but if you can get back to standing, then the game continues, right? Or maybe then the next one's a guard pass, but you can go backwards into the previous games you played. So really like making it quite a large game, but focusing on the transitions between the different phases, right? Which is interesting because like, yeah, we've been playing with that in the gym kind of naturally. I've always thought about like how do you chain things together in a way.
Yeah.
But like specifically in terms of like, okay, we might play a mount game, then we might play a back game. But what if between those games you go from mount to back? Just keep going.
Yeah.
Right? Like the person has to make a clean break to a guard or neutral position to win as the defending player. And the defending player, I don't care if you're in mount, if you're in an S mount, if you're on the back, whatever, as long as hips are covered and you're under elbows, you keep going. Right? So stuff like that. So and it was pretty cool because it's, to me, it's a pretty simple concept, but to hear like that's what he is really focusing on in his room right now, and like we're doing the same thing is just it was just cool to hear.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of wisdom in that, in doing that. I don't think I've like actively been too active or like designing my practices about it. But when I'm in one, say we might be doing like, I like some of those games where it's, you're either working on turtle and headlock control or other person's working on getting the fuck up, standing up, right? And then that's a good example of like that transition from like ground to standing, or it could even be from, grounded to fully pinned or semi-pinned or a guarded position. And then I'll kind of realize it and then extend. Maybe the last set of games will be like, okay, like now you're not done. Now you're still going, Hey, if you get to the floor, but the first one's still connected to you, you're fighting stand up, Then, okay, if you can turn back to face or get your arms back inside, it's like, okay, now you're in a gripping game or a takedown game. And sort of realized, even with you talking about it, be like, yeah, like that is those gray areas are really important. You want to like keep them going. I noticed, I haven't got to it yet, but like, so, Cal Jones has been doing a bunch of interviews lately, and props to him. And God, what a great voice, for this approach. Yeah. It's almost weird. He's almost like too nice. I wish there was like a couple times when he was talking to, I forget his name, the big bodybuilder doctor guy, which was a good, really great. Everybody was very gracious and it was very productive. But there was just a couple times where I was like, no, like, just tell him he's wrong or he doesn't understand.
Push back a little bit.
Just like a little. You don't have to go full Greg, but like little. But actually, and then I think in some follow-ups, there was two other follows up. That Talent Equation podcast for the guy in the UK just had two of the authors of like, it's like an introductory book to ecological psychology. They're like pure psychologists. They're not like sport people at all. They're just, they were talking about it. And they brought that conversation up. And then, and now I noticed Bren, that guy Bren, who's doing his PhD, he's got like a 3-hour conversation with Cal that I just started listening to. And I noticed in one of the segments, it mentioned that the importance of drilling, like between the takedown and ground. So I should probably look that one up, see what they have to say. But I imagine they're going to say exactly what you just said. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So great minds think alike a little bit on that one.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And then the cool thing too is like, because Greg had the 2-day seminar, right? And I could see him intertwining that within in the seminar, right? And like, okay, this is a good example of that. So like I pulled him aside. I'm like, is this what you were saying when you talk about phase transition? Are we on the same page? And like, yeah, good catch on that, right? So we were starting in like a single leg, kind of a standard single leg where the leg is between the legs, head's on the chest. And all you needed to do is capture the ankle on like an outside position, right? From there, all you're going to try and do is get your partner's hands on the floor. That was the first game. Defending players just trying to get their leg back, right? Second game is easy. Again, you put your partner's hands to the floor. From there, you need to transition to a hip control, right? So you need to get some form of a body lock. Boom, that's it. Other players are looking to get their leg free again, right? Then we started from like a front head position where you want to put your partner's hands on the floor, keep the partner's hands on the floor, transition to a single leg. Again, get that ankle, put their hands on the floor, get to the hips. And then he combined it where one player starts on single leg, they're still looking to get hands on floor, get to hips. Defending player is trying to get to the front head position, get their hands on the floor, get to the single leg, get on the hips. So we like combine them to make this cyclical thing where both players are kind of going through the same path.
Yeah, you're both
But
in
again,
an offensive and defensive cycle. You're both like,
right.
You're doing both.
And you can, from that defensive cycle, you can steal the offensive cycle back and put the other player in the defensive cycle.
Yeah.
And you can just keep going cyclically until someone gets to the finish point, which is hands on the mat covering hips, right? So that was a really cool way of seeing how that worked. Because that was kind of like way before I even played with Eco. And we were still doing a lot of drilling. That's something that I've actually played with a little bit in terms of like, I called it chaining. So like chaining things together in terms of like drilling it and playing with it. But then we do positionals too, where it was a very cyclical thing where it just kept kind of going until someone was able to stop it. So just kind of cool to see that come back. And it was just a really neat example of how he's doing that.
Yeah. I remember that too, being a half guard guy. And then even being in like, not that I think deep half is a great idea anymore, but it is if you're just getting squished and you manage to get between the hips, right? As your like third or fourth line of defense. But did hear, I don't know if it was Bernardo Ferreira or Kai Otero or someone was like, hey, if you like half guard and you like this half guard sweeps and you're getting into deep half guard, you're always going to come up to a double under or a over under position. So you should get good at those two passes. And I was like, realize, yeah, that is true. Every time you like come up from that sweep, you are there. And it's like, well, maybe I should get good at those. Same idea. And that was like just that idea, without the details of everything, just knowing how they connect. I was like, I'm much better here because I kind of like know what I'm trying to do or what is roughly speaking going to happen. So instead of popping up and being like, okay, swept, what now? So that's cool. My current favorite prompt right now is get something behind the knees.
Okay.
And I'm astonished how well that works from like everywhere, almost all the time.
Yeah.
And just how powerful it can be and like what it means to different people. Like I kind of do it a little glibly. It won't always be in like explicitly in a game, but I'm walking around. I'll be like, hey, why don't you try just see what else you can get behind the knee? Or like, hey, there's a knee with nothing behind it. Why don't you try see what you can get behind there? Arm, hand, leg, shin, foot, your whole body, your head, like whatever. It's like, that's pretty good. I'm just sort of, again, it's one of those like, it's just like a nothing thing really, but you're like, yeah, there's a lot of power in like a very simple prompt.
Oh, dude, it's it is really cool. Like, just kind of reflecting on my own coaching, like especially for tournaments. Um, Before I was kind of like what the community would call like a joystick coach of like, I'm going to give you very specific advice, um, but like clear. And then as time went on, I was like really trying to like cut out the fluff where I'm just direct. And like nowadays, looking at my coaching, I'm actually kind of proud of how like direct it is and how the fluff is just cut out. Like it's almost kind of like dumb where I could have like recorded myself yesterday and just played that for every match, and like it
Yeah,
was bang on because like the transitions that I found the most happening between, like, I had 10 kids competing yesterday in gi and no gi,
mm,
and the thing I found the most was they were really good at getting to front head for whatever reason, and all I was saying was get head to floor, right? So get your opponent's head to the floor. That's it. Get head to floor. Once that happens, get hips to floor, right? So get them on their side, get their hips on the floor. Cover the hips. So mount, back control, don't care. They cover the hips, get under the elbows. Get both arms to extension, right? So it's just head to floor, hips to floor, cover hips, under elbows. Then they get to that point, I'm like, okay, now you can do whatever you want. Like, submit them however you want. And it was like every kid. Boom, 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 boom. It was just really interesting to see when you speak in such simple terms and cut out all the lingo and just tell them exactly what effect you want to have, how clear it is, and how they can just follow that so easily.
yeah. Well, and then also that you have developed this shared language with
Yeah.
everyone, and that's the language you're using in the room, and it's exactly the same when they're in the performance environment, and so they're like, yeah, right, perfect, because that's how they're thinking, right? That's really
Yeah.
good. Yeah, we a very similar thing. I had well, he's a blue belt now, but he, a white belt that was getting into competing. Like not all our adults compete, but he was taking that path, so it's great. He's doing really well, and he went to like I remember going to a couple of his tournaments and coaching. It was one of those tournaments where without a coaching chair, which we can talk about that more in a second, which I think is outrageous for novice. If there was ever a place where you should have a coach, it's like if you're going to say that your tournament is all about the athlete experience and beginners and getting used to it, it's like, yeah, maybe you should let this noob have a good voice in his ear. Slash maybe coaches should learn to give better prompts, but anyway, we don't have to. But so I'm just like in the crowd, you muscle your way in to make sure it's close, and then the other coaches were like right beside me. It was up in, where was that one? That was in Kelowna, I think. Anyway, doesn't matter. No, that was in Cochrane where we were. It was a True North event, which is, I like their events. They're good. So these two GB coaches, sort of purple beltish, you could just tell they had like gone through the program and then they were starting to coach. And they're just like babbling on, telling stories and like trying to get this guy's attention about like, this, all this stuff. I was like, what are you doing? And I was just giving the exact same prompts you were, I'm like, what are you doing? And they're looking at me like, what? And then athletes working. I'm like, I don't know, guys. Like, I don't know.
I love that so much, where it's just like you're super direct. You say very little, but what you say has such like effect on a match. And the kids are listening like almost Terminators. And the other coaches are like, yo, what is happening here?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Now you've got me on the tirade of, yeah, people who, coaches who just go off. Like, I have two really funny examples of one coach. I'm not going to name what event or anything, but like, I don't think she stopped talking the entire time the match went on. It was like, let me just fill this space no matter what I'm saying, whether it was like, oh, that was a good try, we're going to try and do this, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I started getting annoyed just being in the room. It was crazy. And then on the other end, there was another coach at another event at one time, and he yells out, we worked on this on Tuesday. Do you remember what we worked on Tuesday? Like, it's a weekend. I'm like, dog, you're making them think about Tuesday?
Yeah.
Like,
You want
what
to quiz them?
the kind of advice
I don't
is
think it's
that?
time for a quiz. Just fucking tell
I'm
them.
like, holy smokes, man. Like,
That's mind blower. Yeah. No, and I guess it's like, again, so my background, like team sports, pretty high level exposure to that kind of coaching, especially, and that's something a lot of, if you're just doing jujitsu and wrestling, you're not used to maybe developing a language between players. So like in rugby, you need on offense and defense a very clear way so everybody knows how you're talking about what we're trying to see and getting all those shared affordances, right? That's very, very important, like critically. And then, calling plays, you need codes for plays and like all that stuff. So you're not just like telling them. Like I even noticed in the modern game, you used to in lineouts and stuff, you just call out some bullshit numbers and you just decide which of the numbers was the real one, for like who you were going to throw to or like what you're going to do in the lineout. And I just noticed now they're just like, why do we do that? They just have a little huddle and they go, here's what we're going to do. They walk up and just do it, right?
right.
But we don't get that, right, as much. So I think people aren't quite as used to it. And then even it's like, yeah, if you're in this room and you're used to coach giving you a half hour like lecture on the perfect grip for the knee cut, and then you go to a tournament, it's like you don't have a coaching language for that environment at all. And so that's why you get these crazy things that happen. So actually one idea I've had, I'm just playing with it and it's working well in adults. I actually thought of it for kids, but maybe it's not quite working, or maybe it's just going to take them a little while because I can see how they might be a little worried about it. But I was trying to figure out better engagement for when you have 3 players, and you have to have like that one person watching. And I really encourage people to say, hey, I want you to watch and like think of the goals and then see how those 2 people are dealing with them, because that's very useful to watch people and their solutions, right? And just to like try keep them on task, so the kids, because if they're not playing, you know how it is, they're just like burp, like they're doing whatever, So I was like, well, maybe it'll help if I say, hey, what I want you to do is I want to try you to encourage the kids that you're working with, either one or both, either encourage or heckle them
Mm-hmm.
about what the tasks are that I gave, what the win condition is that I gave, or like put it in kid language, right? Or like anything, that is like important that at games we play, you can say that and do it positive or negative, because we got to get used to people heckling or whatever. So like the kids are a little shy, to like, because they feel like they're coaches. I'm like, don't worry about whether you're right, just try.
Yep.
And so it's worked okay. And I do the same thing with adults now. And the thing I realized is even sometimes when we'll play a great session, and like I'm doing way more sessions where I'm like, I'll give like one free round at the end, just because I'm like, people are like, when do we get to just roll, But a lot of them are like, it's just task-based games the whole time. Maybe it gets quite variable near the end, but it's like, hey, did you notice I didn't go have 5 minutes on the clock, go roll, But even when I do, I'll say, hey, like, try not forget the prompts I was giving, what your tasks were today, or if you remember what your tasks were yesterday or whatever they were, still happening. Okay. Now we're just going to roll. Still happening. So if you don't know what to do, take those. And sometimes that doesn't even work, like weirdly. So now I'm getting everyone to say it. And I realized, oh, you know what else this is going to do? This is going to make it so that if I can't be at a tournament, or some, you know how it is, 2 fights happening at the same time, any of us at the gym, we're all going to have the same language. I noticed like I don't know what video it was before that big $100,000 event. It was like, you could hear Noah coaching. I think it was Gavin was fighting. And I was like, oh, they're like just exactly this kind of language we're talking about, their language, right? Boom. I'm like, oh yeah, like if we all have that language, we can, doesn't matter who it is, we know, and it'll be general enough that that athlete isn't going to be like, where am I supposed to put my hand? What am I going to do? They're just going to remember, like, whatever. They should be working for an inside space, or maybe they should have two hands on their arm and not one, or they should be working to
Right.
get hips to the floor. Or, hey, don't forget, cover the hips and the shoulders. That's a big one, you know? Actually, in tournaments, I do see that a lot. When people are in turtle and they're starting to get back control, everybody overdoes it, and goes just for the shoulders. And they're like, whoa, why am I falling off? Or dude stands up or
Yeah.
whatever. You'd be like, hips and
Yeah.
shoulders, right? Or like, hey,
I always
get back to
tell
the hips, or whatever it is.
I always tell my kids that we don't ride turtles. As in, like, if you don't have your hooks, you don't get on top of a turtle because you're going to slide off, right? So we don't ride turtles. And that's where the hips to floor cue came in too, right? Because kids, yeah, they'll get really quick to like jump on shoulders and then they'll just not put hooks in or whatever the case is. It's like, nah, you put the hips on the floor and then you can pick whether you want back control or mount or whatever top hip cover you want, right? That's, yeah, shared language, super important. But I also like that kind of language can also leave enough room for them to be creative and make their own decisions too, right? So like hip cover, again, that could be anything. As long as you're past the legs and you're covering the hips, right? That could be like a modified mount, an S mount, that could be a back control, that could be back mount, that could be mount, like there's so many options there, right? But it's still clear on what the objective is, like what effect are we trying to have on our partner, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I noticed that actually. Sort of, I was going to bring this up in a different way, but I think it is similar. I'm trying to every now and then put people in sort of less typical alignments. Like I'm not going to be like, okay, let's get all the way into a Tarco Plata and then be like, all right, just make and maintain connections. Like that's maybe a bit much, and we should talk about Tarco Platas again. But like maybe the start of a false reap, and I don't even call it false reap. I'm just like, hey, here's like sort of a weird thing that could happen, which is kind of half guardy. We'll call this half guardy because you are holding on to one leg. You are in a guarded situation. Here's one. Hey, and you'll notice you might be able to get to the leg from this alignment. But when I start in those, and I heard Greg say it, and it's the Grappling Collective. It's like UK based gym that he's worked with. And they had a good one. They're like, hey, if you're going to do these new alignments, first hash should just be the most general, just general. Make and maintain connections. Try to off balance or try to break the alignment of your partner. That's it. I was like, oh, and try that. And people are like discovering all this shit. All these different things that can happen from the false reap, or like how you should, not let that happen to you, if you're on the top, and realize, yeah, like you don't say anything else. That's all. And that's really good. Like if you have that athlete, maybe you're on the bottom, or they're like trying to get out of a defensive cycle into an offensive cycle, and they're maybe not really, really well. It could just be like, hey, focus on connections. Okay, just destabilize. Destabilize. Don't forget, destabilize.
Yep.
And then that's going to give them that moment to be like, okay, out of playing defense, to be like, oh yeah, right. You got to be doing those two things at all times, right? Or you're screwed.
Yeah, sticking them in the situation, letting them explore that space, especially before we start giving them specifics, right? Because if you want the exploration, the vagueness helps with that, right? Just give them simple tasks of, maintain connections, look to destabilize. And they're going to find, likely, they're going to probably find things you're going to tell them anyway, if you give them enough time.
Yeah. And that's a weird enough alignment that I think maybe that one is or maybe just because I'm more tuned into it now, that a lot of different body types and like people who are stronger, weaker, more athletic, less athletic, you're really going to do very different things from that, depending on who you are, Like there's some where if you have it tight enough and you use like, I know there's a lot of talk about how deep you hook that leg with your arm, or if you rear naked choke it or whatever. But there's some where you can just, if you're like strong in the abs, you can just kind of like move your whole body, and that whole other body's person is moving, but not if they're way bigger, or not if you're not in the gym all the time. You'd be like, no, I need some base, or hey, no, I need to like get to that other foot, or make an impulse to my knees, or no, like I've been taught it as well. I can remember being taught it, be like, no, you're not inverting right. You should just fully invert. And it was like, oh, my shoulders hurt, my neck is hurt. I'm not. It's like, I know, but I'm not. No.
Yeah.
I'm currently trying to figure out what other direction I can go. Like,
Right.
I'm not, absolutely not. And then the other one is just like, it's not, your leg is starting in there, it's reaping, but just like if you were on the ground, there's so many times when it's like you have to know the time to pull your leg out and go for the back. Like say you were in like Ashy, right? You're doing well, you've got the reap, and somebody's turning away, and you think you're going to lose the knee line. Shout out to Rob Bernacki for his seminar in Calgary not too long ago, where we worked on this quite a bit and gamifying it. But it's like you need to remember, you can't just like keep holding on. It's like trying to hold on to back control too long and not being like, what are you doing? Like just get on top. Like understand what the important, slow down the hips, like make sure you can get into your own base and just get on top. Like don't be like, hold on too long. It's the same thing. You got to like let that leg come out, start heisting up, and you're going to end up in a passing position or in a back position. So I think it's the same in the false reap too. It's like, you can't just be like, well, my leg's in here. I either get this reap and get that inversion, or that's it, because that's the one move I know. And you'd be like, well, I don't know. Maybe you take it out and you just get up on a single leg, or their hands are on the mat and you just jump on their back. Like, I don't know. So we're going to do that again tonight. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
I wanna take a step back. You had mentioned your class formats.
Yeah.
What do those typically look like? Like what time are you using for most of your rounds? Is it mostly just CLA activities? Are you only giving like one round of rolling, or is there more rolling? Does it change based on, do you have like an all levels class versus like a fundamental foundations class? Like what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so we have some constraints, right, with mat time. So we share our space with a judo club and a karate club as well. Karate club happens to not be running right now, but there's a few clubs. And then we're in, like, as you know, our gym space is unique, right? Like we have someone who owns a building, and like one brother owns this building and it built it. The other brother is the local vet who's been here forever, and they have the vet in there. And they were like, hey, it's important that there's a space for martial arts. So they gave us the whole top floor that our mat space is like. We have no right to have the gym that we have. It's amazing. Like we have one shower and like a bathroom. We could do better on change rooms, but other than that, it's so big. It's so amazing.
Yeah, it's a nice room.
And he gives it for us way below market value, right? So the Zenders, who are longtime folks from Invermere, are really the reason all of our clubs can do what we can do and let us grow, to do that. But as a result, like you can't have like kids running up and down the stairs, because it's kind of like mixed in with the operations of the vet. You can see how that could go bad.
Yeah.
If something sensitive's happening at the vet, or some room's open that's not supposed to be in, and you don't want some kid running into the surgical bay or something. So we're limited on time. Okay, so I don't have enough time. I would really like to have a just like Greg does it, a fundamentals and an all levels, but I can't. So I have spent a lot of time learning about task scaling. And even though it does take me into the talking range a bit much, because I have to kind of say, hey, here's level 1, I'll be like, I'm not even going to tell you. I'm not even going to pick for you who has to do level 1, but here's level 1. Start at level 1. Start there. If you're having success, here's level 2. Bit more complex, or a bit more win conditions. Here's level 3. So trying to like get better at doing that all the time, so we can just have the class design that it's like, I don't care if you're black belt who's visiting or your intro level free trial class day one. Have to pick a little bit with partnering, that which is always a big deal, and then just trying to do the tasks. So yeah, so just one all levels classes. If there's people competing, we'll pick a day or add a day, like on the weekend. And I like to make it sort of Saturday morning, so it's sort of the same time that you're going to be competing to go a little bit higher intensity. And even, anyway, I really encourage those people because I'll say, hey, it's time. You'll be like, hey, okay, we got a month, we got 6 weeks. It's time to like stop exploring and start winning, But like the experience for everyone's more important. And just like Greg's like, oh, I don't let my competitors touch my hobbyists ever. Because it's just like such a different thing that's happening. And like a hobbyist is not going to enjoy what a competitor is trying to do to them. They're not going to feel like it's as fun.
Yeah.
It's still a game. It's not fighting. It's still just a match, whatever. But it's going to be like probably too intense. And neither are getting out of it. And just the intentions are so different, right? So similarly, I've said, hey, these are the things, but you have to keep your intensity level. Even though I don't want you to maybe search as much, I want you to be like, just try go for what you think, but your intensity needs to stay chill when you're touching the white belt who's 2 months in,
Right.
It's like, I just do this to get out of the house. It seems you guys are cool. Grappling seems fun, and be like, yeah, that guy needs to continue having fun while this other person's like getting ready to compete. So we try to keep that intensity level totally separate. Even if I say, hey, you're don't search so much. Usually I'm just like, make mistakes, tap a lot. If you've tried some grip and it works, don't use that grip next time. Try something else, even to find out it fails, all that stuff. I'll be like, no, just be more intentional. Just try, get to your A game, let's say, but the intention has to be different. So anyway, to answer your question, so as much as I can, just CLA rounds. And then like a Friday night is kind of our most social night. It's actually something I really like. And it's, someone else had mentioned, it's like every other sport has a beer league. It's like, why can't grapplers have a beer league? It's like this big gap between like, I'm such a serious competitor and I'm winning worlds, or you're nothing. It's like, well, there's a range in between. There's some of us who like to compete, but aren't going to cut weight, or their wives don't let them cut weight because they turn into an absolute terrible human. That's me. Or whatever. There's somewhere in between. So we have lots of fun, good music going, high energy, and then we all stick around for a beer, or we make sure there's non-alcoholic stuff or pops for teenagers and stuff, and just have that level of social. So maybe on that night, on a Friday night, it'll be like, let's get two, or I'll finish the session. We'll go for an hour and a half, and then I'll say, okay, like if you're done, let's hang out. We'll have a beer and heckle whoever's rolling. If you want to keep rolling, keep rolling. And mostly it's like 2 hours, 2.25 hours, and there's always still people on the mats. And at that point, it's just kind of turned into open mat. But if I can, for our normal classes, which are an hour and a half, just task-based games, And if I look at the time and I'm like, it's not the right time to do a full roll, or like have some new task, or I've hit a limit on a certain area, I don't want to start something new, I'll just go, okay, you get a free roll, just because I've timed it wrong or something. Right. We've spent some time talking about something, or I added around and changed a constraint because I saw something happening and I wanted to address it or whatever. Yeah. And then I we've been working on non-judo guy working on judo. So as in feet touching hips, hips touching hips for takedowns. So we always warm up with some grip fighting, whether it's standing or not. And I've been kind of lately been doing like a standing warm up, guarded warm up. Then I go back to a standing drill, and I go back to then switch to something guarded. Then, like we were talking about with the phase thing, hopefully it's something that might be continuous that we might blend together. Um, but I am doing quite a bit more on the feet just to get people used to um, doing more judo-y, less wrestly stuff. Used to be very single leg based, and we still do that. But now I'm trying to encourage learning about trips, learning about timing, and getting your hip to their hip. Or even sacrifice throws. I don't. We're not guard pullers, but we might screw up a tomonagi and end up in guard. I'll say that.
Yeah.
You can do some sort of not quite flying armbar tomonagi, and if it doesn't work, you end up in half guard or full guard. Cool. You're not allowed to be like, okay, let's sit down. No.
Yeah.
Anyway, so a bit more focused standing, and then I'll just make sure I do a guarded position, pinning position, and then something that phases between them, and then that's it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do your rounds look like time wise?
So for kids, I'm going 3 or 4 minutes. Or like, if I'm honest, I'm just trying to like watch, and if I see it's drifting, I'll be like, all right, time to.
Yeah.
I guess it's 2.5 or 2.
Yeah.
We need something new. Like that didn't engage them. Stop. Find something that engages them. But yeah, in that range, and then like that's what they will fight at, 3 or 4 minutes, right? And then adults, standard is 5, and I'll go up to 10 depending on what it is. I am finding with like say finishing type stuff, like say an arm lock or a kimura, like I might go longer. But again, having those cascading conditions, So say it was like we were working on backs and getting chokes or arms. Maybe if we've gone that far, it'll be, okay, start with everything you want, covering the hips, hands closed, or like hands 2-on-1 on an arm already. Maybe if it's more arm focused, it's, okay, maintain your pin, keep covering shoulders and hips, try get more of your body around the shoulders, finish the arm, like it's kind of hard to like give the exact language because it sort of depends on what the class was, what the focus for that might have been, but maybe it's like, hey, extend the arm or rotate the arm. I don't know. Or remember, you can do both. Or hey, finish the arm, and if you can't finish the arm, go back to the neck, or whatever it is. And then, okay, if you accomplish that, next time you only get 1 foot covering the hips. Next time, no feet covering the hips. Next time, no feet covering the hips, and your hands not separated, holding but like not closed. Doing those sort of conditions, and then I'll leave that for 10 minutes for sure, so that people get a lot of it. It starts pretty low variability, but gives them a bunch of time. And instead of doing like adding each one, if the room is right, like if it's the right people in the room, I'll just be like, you got basically like, hey, you have 10 minutes to work on your arm lock control. Just go. Yeah. What are you doing?
So it's interesting because I've had the opportunity to go to a bunch of gyms in the last week who are running CLA programs to different extents, right? So I've seen some differences.
Yeah.
Like with Greg's seminar, a question came up and he said they generally never play under 6 minutes.
Yeah.
And generally what he does is he does about 7 rounds of games or like constraint-led activities, right? And then 1 open round, which surprised me. And then like Hayden at the Academy Eden Prairie, he seemed to really like 9-minute rounds. Same with him and my buddy Morgan. They're like 9-minute rounds are goated. That's almost all we do. right? So they did a lot of nines, right?
9.
And they typically would do same thing where it's like all CLA rounds for an hour and a half, and then you get one open round.
And at
I
those
went
gyms,
to
what sort of people are going to those gyms? Are they like high performance focused or hobbyist gyms or mixed? What kind of makeup of people?
for Academy in Prairie. Hayden's whole idea is he has built his schedule around the person who will train jujitsu 6 times a week,
Hmm.
right? So like maximizing skill acquisition, and then like I think Fridays and Sundays they have a lot more open rounds, right? But if you miss those days, well, you just miss those days, right?
Yeah.
So he's like really heavy onto the skill acquisition side. Like I see two different areas where it's like heavy on the skill acquisition. You're going to do a ton more CLA, right? As opposed to like I like to roll. I like to have that live and that chaos in there. So I do a little bit more rolling than a lot of these other gyms I found. And then so like it was for Hayden's class, we did mostly 9-minute rounds, and that was kind of the format, an hour and a half, and then one open round. I did a class with Tyler Spangler. He also teaches at that gym, which was really cool to see. So he did like, I think the first half an hour was just heavy wrestling, and it was only 4-minute rounds because he wanted to push the pace.
Yeah.
And then when we got to the jiu-jitsu stuff, it turned into 6-minute rounds, right? I don't think we did any actual tree rolling that class. But I also watched Tyler do a beginner class with like pretty much all white belts. I think there was 2 blue belts, and I think Morgan hopped in as a black belt. And yeah, it was all CLA practice. I think 6 minutes, basically an activity, and I think they had one open round again. I went to another club, Hamel Jiu-Jitsu. They're pretty new. They have a really sick space. And their head coach there, Drake, did an hour of CLA and then half an hour of rolling, right? I don't remember what the times were on the rounds, but that's what I do. I do an hour full of CLA for adults and then half an hour of rolling. If they want to keep rolling and I have nothing going on, we usually roll for more time,
Yeah.
right? But like that 2/3 CLA and then 1/3 open rolling is what I like to do personally.
Yeah.
I'm just not as like my crew likes to fucking roll and like try and put everything together. And I like to roll as well. So it's like hard for me to go hardcore and like, no, we're just doing all CLA and I'm taking that away. Because like you were saying, like you have gyms that are like hardcore competitive gyms, and then you kind of have like your hobbyists. And like I mostly have hobbyists who really like to compete apparently. Like the amount of competitors we have for a small gym is kind of a weird ratio, but they just really like to compete, right? So
It's interesting. You never know. Like a hobbyist, that might mean it's that person who's like, oh, I just kind of like to roll, hobbyist. Or another hobbyist who's like, oh, I just kind of like to learn. So I like just CLA. And you're like, well, it's kind of like your room and what works for them. And then I think even day to day, like actually now I'm reflecting, if I'm most honest, it's like, if people are really into the drills and they're really exploring and super engaged, it's like maybe I would have had a thought to be like, yeah, let's get some free rounds in, or hey, I want to do some rounds with points today or whatever. I'd be like, they're super into it. Like let's change the task here. They're like really into this, so like let's keep going. Always sort of change that adaptability thing on the fly. Yeah, maybe I'll try 6 or 8 or 9. Originally I asked about that 9-minute because I'm like, oh, maybe the people they have have enough cardio to run 9-minute rounds, and like maybe I'm like, not everyone's gonna like make it for a 9-minute round. Or I realized, oh, this is a hard game. Maybe we should just go 5, but I'll experiment and see what happens.
For sure. And like they have different levels of classes too. Like they have foundation programs, they have all levels programs. So that it could be a little bit different because like the class that I saw Tyler teaching was a more beginner program and it was 6-minute rounds, right?
Yeah.
While the ones that I was doing with the all levels, so it was lots of nines, except for Tyler's was fours and sixes, right? So it seems like there's some flexibility in there as well. Um, yeah, it depends on me. Like with the kids, we do threes as like a minimum, and I'll push them to sixes as well, depending on what the goal is.
Oh yeah.
But my room just has like we've built some pretty good attention spans on the kids.
Mm.
If you're going to do that with a young group, yeah, it takes a long time to build that attention span.
Yeah.
Um, or like a new group too. That would be hard to do with, but my crew they seem to stay on task, so it's pretty good for that, right? For adults, depends on what we do. If it's like hard stand up, it could be threes. If it's like a warm up, sometimes it's twos. But I'm really pushing towards those sixes and up now. Just I like the exploration and time on task,
Yeah.
right? So it all depends on the room. Like if the fatigue level is high, um, who's in the room, because I have such a because I don't have enough time to have like a foundations class and an all levels class. So we just do all levels,
Yeah.
right? And like our gym is pretty new. Like I have 6 blue belts, so like all levels fits people just fine anyway. But I have 14-year-olds who are doing our adult classes. I have a 63-year-old. Like it is sometimes an interesting like group of threes really help with the older crowd, right?
Yeah.
More rest. Like, hey, you need a rest. You can take a rest. That's okay. Like building that into the culture. Most people don't take it, but like beginners, older, like take it, right? I'll try working in a group of 3 or giving people different constraints or tasks to work on too, right? Just the scaling of it.
Yeah.
So,
The other one that I don't know if we talked about before, but I somewhere along the line learned that the Mendez brothers, if they're doing like open rounds, they do 3-minute rounds with scoring. And I think even, or maybe that's something I added. I added like if you get submitted, and there's like if you get submitted in the first minute, you just have to take like 30 seconds off, and then you can go. But if it's anything like after that, you're just lost the round.
oh yeah.
Just to be like, don't forget, like we have to remember, like in competition, you're not like, oh, that was interesting. I guess you got me. Like, cool. You'll be like, no, you lost.
Yeah. More of a performance round.
Yeah, and like they get spicy because you're like, hey, 3 minutes, so people are trying hard. They are trying to submit. They are trying to get points. When they get behind points, they're like, shit, I've got like a minute to like get this back. And so it's good. It adds a lot of focus. I really like them. They're pretty good for conditioning. We'll go 3 minutes with like 30-minute or 30-second rest, so not much.
Mm-hmm.
And that was good. That was kind of like how I was building in. If anything, because again, we're not like super competition focused, so a lot of times I would like be just more pure jujitsu and like not talk about points too much. And then I tried a few ways to just remember points, and I was like, okay, you just gotta do rounds. Every now and then I just be like, hey, this round's with points. If you don't know points, other person just call out the points when they're happening, And then, okay. And then you get a lot of good discussions about like what counts and people realizing that, turnovers aren't sweeps, things like that, which they might not have realized, like, oh, I rolled you over, points. And you're like, you didn't have a guard, no points. Which is a stupid rule, but true. So doing that and kind of use that, and that worked really well. And now the big part is like you always hear about manipulating tasks based on points, but because I didn't have a baseline for points. If I just say, oh, hey, randomly, here's a game. If you do this, it's 1 point. If you do this, it's 5 points. Like we weren't really using points. It didn't mean anything. But now we're like on the points train. It's such a good thing to manipulate. Now we're all used to it, and people are used to like keeping the score and trying to win. That you can manipulate those points really well, or just add something that now scores, or remove something that doesn't score anymore, or whatever it is. And it's so good. I was like, oh, I should have done this a year ago.
Mm.
Instead of being like, if somebody says, "Hey, I want to compete," I go, "Cool. Well, here's the situation. What is that score?" And they're like, "Oh, I don't know scoring." And be like, "Okay, well, go read the handbook. Go read the IBJJF rule book. Here's what you got to do for cardio. Minimums for cardio to prepare." I sort of have like a little package of intro to compete
Mhm.
that I sort of say, "Hey, you need to do this if you want to go." And it used to include that. Hey, learn that stuff on your own. But now we've changed it, and we're like, not like we're an IBJJF points gym all of a sudden. I just mean, if you're gonna play hoops, you got to know how to
Yep.
score.
Yep. For sure.
Yeah,
Mm. Cool.
yeah.
Mm.
Um, do you want to talk about Tarka again?
Sure.
So I just listened to Greg did one where he was on with Preet and with Sonny Brown from like a while ago. And I forgot that one is titled. It's like they started talking about the SPG model of progressive resistance, and I had forgot that Preet has that background. Not that he does that anymore. And they were just sort of talking about the differences. Some people are like, "Oh, I'm in SPG. We already do this," and you're like, I mean,
Okay.
aliveness is good, but like you're not. No, you're not. Or
Yeah.
anyway, maybe like this is like a segue into this conversation about people being like, "Say, I'm just doing this," and you're like, "No," But anyway, and there's an important reason for that. Not in the end of the day, it's like, hey, keep your practice live, gamify it. I don't care if you have a theory of consciousness and learning behind that or not. Just okay, good, great. That's
Yeah.
probably enough for most people, but um, yeah. But so they talked about Tarkplata, and sort of Preet was pushing Greg to be like, oh, but if you want the Tarkplata, like, and and it's like, yeah, that's wrong. Like we all have gone through that phase of like, oh, I can't like do this to like try get one move to happen, right? Constrain you to make one movement happen. That's not how we should be using it.
Mhm.
Now it's easy enough if you wanted to, just to be like, by the way, Tarka platas exist. You could like put someone into a Tarka plata and be like, okay, there's your alignment. You're in a finishing alignment, just like you would for like, okay, starting an armbar, learn arm bars, right? Because there's like, you've hit all the invariants. It's very like set. You could do that. But Greg's big point was like, well, I'm going to start in that figure four alignment, you know, start with those general tasks, make and maintain the connection, keep your partner pinned. And then you can prompt and allow people to explore that, hey, I could get to the back from this. I could just pin from this. I can twist it and get a submission. I can use it to as a control to change to a head and arm. I can use it as a way to control so I can get into the legs. And then also, hey, I'm not super strong with my arms. So if I want, I can get my legs involved, which are strong. And it's way more general. You can't be like, okay, I'm going to do this thing. So you end up having to do it. And that's when last time we talked about it, my joke was like, I couldn't believe how simple it was. I sort of wanted to see if Tarkapatas would happen. And it was that sort of thing. It was a Kimura based thing. I think we ended up doing it from guard, but I was trying to make that point that it is just still a guard where you have control. And then I just said, hey, if you're having a hard time or you can't, find leverage, here's different things you can do with your legs. Like, say, like you had that half guard Kimura control, maybe you're going to Choi bar or whatever, and the various things you can do with your legs to help there. And I was like, you can also like add a leg to the grips on the arm. And hey, here's the big secret. Don't let go of the arm. Maybe let go of the arm that's not the primary thing holding the arm. I don't know, see what happens. Didn't talk about anything else. All of a sudden, some people who were like, wanted to check that out are checking it out. And then they're like, oh, what do you do now? And I'd be like, I don't know. See how you can make and maintain that connection and see which way you can rotate. See which way they don't want you to rotate. 10 minutes, people are like, oh. They're like, oh, can you do this the other way? And be like, yeah. Like from our reverse Kimura, like Tarka Plata or Barata Plata, it's like, yeah, sure. It was very surprising. Yeah. That's my rant on that stuff.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Like, I find people who are new to using the constraint-led approach, that's typically what they're doing is they're just trying to constrain people towards the one solution they want, right?
Yeah.
They're trying to teach techniques with constraints. I see a lot of people start like that, and then the more they hopefully look into it and experience it, they start to realize, like, no, let's add more vagueness to it so people can explore and find solutions on their own, right?
Yeah, it's a scary thing. Like like I remember going through it, and you start doing it, and then you're like, oh, does this really work? Like, can I be that general and like these things will happen, or I need to make the omoplata or the whatever plata exist, and then you realize no, people really do self-organize.
Yeah, for sure. It was funny, like Kavan hit me up one day and he was just bugging me and he was like, how would you make a Tarico Plata emerge, right? Um, so I thought about it. If you wanted it to, like if you wanted to go down that road, because I do have someone in the gym who was pretty good at Tarico Platas. Like he was in a quintet and had an opponent who was big enough where he could have a 4-minute round or an 8-minute round. Because there was like an over 50-pound difference. Like he was a big guy, right? So he took the 8 and he ended up hitting him with a Tarico Plata, right? And how that ended up emerging is he found himself in that kind of sitting on the head type Kimura position a lot in the gym, but he couldn't separate the hands. He really struggled with that. And I just said, what's stronger than your arms? And walked away.
Yeah.
Right? And he figured it out on his own. Oh, I can get my legs in there and continue to like work and work on those details. We're to the point like he's submitting a lot of people with it now, right?
Yeah.
He's doing really well. And like if you wanted to have that emerge, yeah, you just make sure like, hey, bottom player, you keep your hands connected at all times. Or if you're in a gi, grab your fucking belt, bro. Like it is so hard to separate someone's hands when they grab their belt. And then top player, what other tools that are stronger than your arms can you use? Explore. And you might get people just, they can find a way, maybe they unlace the hands, like I'm going to separate the hands and it's nice and easy and they take just a normal Kimura. Some people might just elect to go for an arm bar, me, right? Some people might kick the legs over. Like there's so many movement solutions there. It's going to come up. And if it doesn't, okay, they haven't run into the problem where it's required yet. That's okay. But when they do run into that problem, right? At least now they've explored that area. It might pop up then, right?
Yeah, there's all those other avenues. Like I still do say it's like you can't when you're starting. You're always like, oh, I've got the Kimura, I've got the arm bar, and you like if you're not finishing it, you're like, oh, I'm failing. And you're like, are you? Like you're pinning them. You have this crazy lever control.
Take all the time in the world.
I mean, I guess you're not finishing the thing you want to finish, but like, so? I'll be like, what else can you do with that? I mean, mostly that's like, oh yeah, I'm on their back now. You're like, yeah, terrible failure. You're so bad. Oh no, now they're in a Kimura and you're on their back. Seems good. If you're doing that and in the gi, you're like, they're getting choked pretty quick. Yeah, so it's like maybe you're exploring those other things, but if you're like, no, okay, you really do want to attack this arm, you're like, well, yeah, just, I don't know, if you can't break the grip, I don't know, what's stronger? Yeah, than your arms, your legs. Maybe that's just the grip break. Maybe that's like, oh yeah, I can use my arm for the rotation or whatever. And it just happens. That was a mind blower for me. I'm like, wow, this is magic. And we have
Yeah.
some people that's a hard one to. You need like either a room of purple and brown belts, and then you've got a lot of base to start, or like they're just used to that sort of instruction and they'll be like, oh yeah, figure it out. But trying to do that step by step, like you're gonna lose people so far before your legs are getting involved for a tarkapada.
That's the thing. Like, people make it needlessly complex, right? Like, it is a Kimura. You just get your legs involved, right? So just guide them. Like, what's stronger than your arms? They get their legs involved. And then maybe they run into other problems down the road, but that's okay. Because you're giving them the tools to work through those problems anyway, right? So a problem might be, man, I keep losing the wrist control when I kick my leg over. What do I do? Well, can you configure your arms differently so you can connect your partner, right? So it's like, yeah, I could show you straight up, go from a Kimura grip to like maybe hug the hip a little bit more as you kick over and it keeps it better, right? Or just like, hey, can you modify your grip that would help you do this? Like, how can you accomplish this? Just guide them and they're going to figure it out. But you give them all of that information immediately when it's not relevant to them because they haven't run into the problem. Yeah, they're going to be overloaded and it's going to be too difficult,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
So the beauty of this approach
yeah,
simplifies things.
yeah. So just to pivot to that one thing I wanted to get back to, like I've noticed it. I fell into another like Reddit hole of, sometimes I'm pretty generous and good on Reddit, and sometimes I'm just like a big jerk. And often, like when I'll see something that I just know is wrong, I just do annoying like no, and just
Mhm.
see. Sometimes they're like, oh, like if they're interested, they'll be like, oh, why? Or they'll get really mad and be like, you can't just say that. Like, give your whole argument, and then I'll be like, all right, like, are you sure? Um, so I went down one of those rabbit holes, and that one was about what was it? Dale's Cone of Learning, which is like an old 1920s, 30s. No, I guess he published that in late 40s. And he's an educator, not a scientist. Turns out like this cone of learning was just like his idea. It wasn't like he didn't do any research. He just was like, seems to me. And it was the idea of like being active is better for learning than passive things. Listening to someone, writing something down, and then the best is like learning by doing. And someone was like, "Hey, what's this? Like, does this apply?" And then someone just wrote like, "Seems to me that eco is just an appeal to this." And I was like, "Nope." And then that person got into it and was very serious about it. And like we were just insulting each other. You can go to Reddit and find it if you want. He was like definitely trolling, but I was like, no, I'll bite. And I was like, well, there's a few reasons. I was like, one, this guy published this after Gibson's published his books on like ecological psychology. So just in the timeline, this didn't happen first. So the eco guys definitely didn't use this to be like make their thing. Two, this guy, it's very easy. You can just look him up. Is like information processing guy, and he's talking about better ways, more efficient ways to like get information, to retain information, so you can recall information. And I was like, that's just not what eco people think is happening.
Mhm.
So there's number two. Number three, here's the big one. It's like we're not putting up the wall between our brains and the rest of whatever it is, the world. We're not doing like mental models and mental representations and breaking everything down just into information that we like process, or like whether it's a motor control scheme, right? We have it and then we press play and do it. Like that's just not what's happening. And that's what that person's saying is happening, and eco is saying that is not happening. So there's another reason why what you were saying is just wrong, right? We don't, that's not how we think of it, right? We think of these emerging behaviors where the brain is obviously part of it, the person's part of it, but the environment and that dynamic is really the important thing, right? Which is a big deal. And then there's just a few other times when people will say, and Greg said it even too, it's like, hey, here's the number one thing. It's like, if you don't want to talk about like theories of information and theories of consciousness, that's fine. Okay. But don't say you're just doing eco, because you have something that's game-like and it's something that's effortful, you know, and it's not dead drilling. Okay. That's not enough. You either believe that like consciousness and behavior is like emergent properties, blah, 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 all the eco stuff, right? Or you believe that there's this wall between us and the rest of the world, and we're making mental models and representations and recreating everything and then pushing it back out.
Mm.
You're doing one of those two things. And if you're not doing the first thing, you are not doing eco. Like, it's that simple. And then that topic of conversation has been coming up and making the circles. And so that one, that the talent equation, the most recent episode, I think it's like literally called that. We are not making models of the world in our brains. We don't have to do that, you know? And it brings up some other, anyway, this person was like, oh, you're totally you use the word vacuous like 10 times and then use some like, I learned how to debate on TikTok type stuff. And I was like, dude, I have a degree in formal logic. Okay. Like, I know the rhetoric. Okay. Don't. He's like, oh, you're just appealing to authority. And I was like, yeah, I'm appealing to the experts in this field and what their arguments are. That's not an appeal of authority. That's like a normal thing to do. It would be an appeal of authority if I asked a rocket scientist his opinion on brain science. Be like, oh, he's an authority, you know? Or there was some obvious logical fallacy with whatever the person was saying, which is like kind of secondary. It's like really just means, you know, if I wanted to know a question about, say, constitutional law in America for whatever reason, if I was interested in that these days, if you went to the leading scholar in constitutional law, you can probably safely take their word on it, take his or her word on it, like, and start there. Maybe, yeah, verify, look into it, double check. Or you're like, I don't question the scientists at NASA that they know how to launch a rocket, you know, whether that's true or not. I believe them, you know, so it's fine. Anyway, rant about that. And then, you know, some other stuff, but that circle of like just getting to that point, and it happened to Cal as well, where some people just won't, they'll be like, yeah, but the brain's involved. We're like, hey, you have an imagination. You're like, you can do a calculation, you know? Hey, you're doing some math. You're doing some calculations in your mind. So, oh yeah, that's nice. Yeah, the environment counts, but no, it's the brain is always doing this thing. And you're like, well, I mean, like, what are you, Descartes? You just are like, you just realize like, oh, I'm conscious of my own thinking. You're like, that's nice. You know, that like doesn't get you past that idea of like, no, like language, math, all these like conceptual things in the ecological framework are like not at all the same, you know, conceived the same way. We're like, no, even those are direct perceptions of like shared understanding of things, you know, how we learn to speak, right? It's like, is a behavior that's built out of literally talking to people, you know, doing math, doing all those things. It's just like not the same. And then it's just like, there is no, hey, this part of the brain is controlling all the stuff with information, like that argument regresses. You're like, okay, well, who's in charge of that part of your brain? Okay, cool. Then who's in charge of that? Like, someone's always got to be in charge, and it's just like, that's just not what's happening. It's very complex and mysterious, and we do have abstract thought, and we have all these things, but it's like, you know what? You don't if you weren't in the world. So
The interesting thing is most coaches don't even know what they're arguing for, right? Like they haven't dug into things deeply enough to know, like, oh, I'm from an information processing camp, or I believe in direct perception. Like most people don't even know what the hell you're talking about when it comes to that, right? They just really look at the tools and maybe how people learn, but most coaches are ignorant to why they're arguing for things anyway, right? I think one of the biggest things that one of the biggest sellers, like I was talking to my wife about this, and we were talking about like schema and schema theory, and I'm not like super well read into it, but my basic understanding is like your brain basically perceives the information of the world, so like the room I'm in, and then builds like a model of that room in your mind, and then builds a model of yourself, and then how you can interact. So it's like there's a little computer working in there, like, okay, build room. It's like a Sims room, and then you're a little sim, and then how can you interact? And like that would take so much power to like process all of that. And like that just seems so ineffective in terms of like energy use. Like, why wouldn't you just use the source directly? Like when you put it that way, it's just like, okay, yeah, direct perception makes a whole lot more sense, because like that's crazy.
yeah. Yeah, it's all very deep. And like, I guess, fair point to everyone is like, because I do have an interest in this, right? Like the neuroscientists and the philosophers have not cracked the problem of consciousness. It is a hard problem. There is no other phenomenon that you can't, only I know, like nobody else can look into my consciousness. I can't look into yours, can't look into anybody else's. We sort of have shared experiences, but it's also, you can't disembody it. There's no way to like have a consciousness in a lab without the world. Like it's difficult to study and figure out. And we can like look at some of the mechanisms that happen or give analogies to whatever, current technology might be to like compare, we like to do that, right? Of how the mind might work, but it's not solved. So
no. There's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of mystery, and like it's okay that we don't know these things, but like the best crack we have at it right now seems to be direct perception, right? And that might change down the road, or I don't know. Or I'm not an expert in it, but like people can also look and think, well, we have imagination and we can build these models in our heads. Like, okay, just because we can doesn't mean that's how we operate all the time. Like both things can be true. I could have a mental image of the room and, I think with my representations, I should be able to do this. And like, I can see the affordances, but that doesn't mean that's how I go and interact with the world all the time. Yeah. Just because I can doesn't mean that's how it always works. Right.
Yeah. Right. I was going to say the exact same thing. And like, that's anyway, we'll be here for like 2 hours trying to crack that one. But you're like, yes, you can have imagination. You have memory. We have abstract thought. We understand what meaning is, and we can think about our own thoughts. We can track our own thoughts, right? Mm-hmm. Although if you start getting into meditation, you get into your Sam Harris type stuff, or you have any level of control of your thoughts, you realize how many of them are just like spammy nothing. But anyway, it's just because you can do those sort of things, it doesn't really, it's not like the descriptive power of the process of like what consciousness is, Right. And and there's like all this modern, it doesn't help that like a lot of modern neuroscience and modern physics, like quantum physics in particular. Like, I don't know, maybe everybody has to go watch that movie about the A bomb. What was that one called? Or it was the guy's name. Anyway, that movie again, where Killian's got some great acting in there, and they're starting to talk about like how this works, and it all starts with like, hey, it's pretty weird. Like this atom is this in this place, and it's also at the same time something else in a different place. And they're like, that's not possible. And you're like, I know, but it is. But that's what's happening. But it is. Or like, hey, every time we try to measure this thing, we like interact with this thing through measuring it, it changes. There are only relationships. There's nothing is in, I don't know, vacuum's the right word or whatever it is, but as compelling as like we are and interesting, it's like you're not anything unless you can pick something up, like talk to you. Language is a good one. Like a language of one isn't a thing, right? Like words don't have like meanings. They only have shared meanings,
Right.
And so if a group of people don't agree on what a thing is, then it's just doesn't exist, right? So that's important. That's why, I was a grammar stickler for a while. And something like when people say, oh, I did that on accident, I still hate that phrase. But for a while, you could be like, oh, no, you're wrong. Oh, that doesn't make sense to me. What you're saying, that's a nonsensical thing. Oh, I did it on accident. That's not how you use that. And be like, well, as soon as like 2 or 3 people kind of get what you mean by that, even though you mean by accident, that's sort of what's right. As soon as we all like understand and enough people are using it, it's right now. Like, sorry. And it's like literally in the dictionary and is part of like the real grammar. Like new words happen like that all the time.
Yeah.
And
Language
you'd be like, no, you're wrong. And you'd be like, well, we're all doing it now. So now it's right.
Now we're right.
Because we have this shared understanding of what it is, Anyway,
Right.
there's a lot of nuance in that. But even today, I'm sure there's plenty of things like words we've both used that we have some connection to, and some where we're like using it a little bit differently. And for sure, in all, how like the eco literature gets. I mean, as soon as you start getting into the philosophy stuff, it's like, if you have you been listening to Rob Gray's stuff about all the trying to go through the chapters of Turvey and all of his stuff. He's a sort of a difficult philosopher. But that's the sort they spend like an hour talking about one paragraph, trying to like just figure out what the fuck he means by particular words. You can get that dense. All the way
Well,
down
even
to,
like
do you know what I mean when I say cover the hips? What do you mean cover?
well, even if you look at recently, like the big debate with drilling, you'll notice the definition of drilling continues to change and is different to everyone as well.
Oh yeah,
That's the same thing, right? So now we have to like going into arguments like, hey, can you define drilling? And some people are like, oh, you're an idiot. You should know what it is. It's like, but no, like the meaning of drilling has drifted significantly since the constraint-led approach has been introduced, because now people are trying to like, oh yeah, we've always been doing that. It's just drilling with resistance or drilling with reactions or drilling with appropriate, like, okay, so that's changing now, which not a bad thing for us if like the tools that people are using are changing because of the influence that the constraint-led approach is happening. That's good for grappling.
yeah,
Right. But it's again the importance of having the precision in language and a common understanding, right? Because covering like your example of covering the hips, like my room knows what that means. Get past the legs, cover the hips. But someone else might be like, oh, legs could be in front, I'll just cover the hips and lay on them. That's not what we mean though, right?
yeah. That stuff's pretty interesting. You have anything else coming up, or is your big trip? Oh yeah, you survived 2 airplane rides, so congratulations on
Yeah.
your first, at least 2, I guess, airplane rides. I hope airports were not terrible. Airports can be great or really bad.
It was good. I got randomly selected out of me and my wife for a search, of course.
Yeah,
But that was fine. They were just fine. And there's been a lot of talk right now about like traveling to the States and like it's just a terrible. It was fine. The border security was actually really nice to us, and we had zero issues. And coming back, actually, the guy was like, "Oh, what were you in the States for?" Like the Canadian border, and we're like, "Oh, jiu-jitsu." He's like, "Oh, what belt are you?" He ended up being a jiu-jitsu guy too.
Nice.
So no, the flying was really good. Really cool to experience. Like Minneapolis has a strong scene out there for grappling. Like the amount of gyms they have is just crazy for one.
Yeah.
But the amount of people who are utilizing and like deeply looking in the constraint led approach is impressive. Like you have Hayden's gym, the Academy Eden Prairie, like they're 100% CLA. They don't even talk about it. It's like their students will go out to other gyms and then come back and be like, "Hey, coach, have you heard about the ecological approach?" And they're like, "Yeah, bro, that's what we do." Like they're oblivious, right? They just treat it like this is training. That's it,
Yeah.
right? My buddy Morgan teaches like M theory, and they still have drilling. That I think they're kind of more of a hybrid. I didn't get a chance to train there, but he's got a solid class out there. Again, like Hamill Jiu-Jitsu. I think the owner is like a little bit on the fence about eco, but confident enough to make their head coach an eco guy, right? Who runs 100% CLA. He plans all the classes. He's the head guy that everyone else goes to, right?
Yeah.
So really cool to see their scene out there, and a lot of people like going in that direction and seeing how they're doing in terms of like similarities between all of their gyms, my practice, your practice, Greg's, right? But also differences, right? It's super cool to see with that.
Yeah.
Greg's seminars were good. The games were really quite simple, but also like simple is a good thing in my mind. But I could also see what he was kind of like interweaving between the games, which was really cool. The Sean Mitska thing was really cool to see as well, because like he's works with like the NFL, right? So for him to be like, "Hey man, like 2012, I went through what Greg was going through. Like the first through the door always gets bloody type deal, right?"
Yeah.
So to hear what we're going through right now from a perspective of a major sport and how they had to go through it and are still going through it, that was really cool to me to see that perspective, right? Because a lot of people are like, "Oh, well, major football and stuff aren't doing it." It's like, you just don't know they're doing it. They definitely are, right? They're experts in all across the field. And you look at the top performing teams, have a look at their practice.
Yeah, it's like the basketball one too. People like to do that and be like, "Oh, you're telling me they don't like go and get out there and like practice like just and doing their shot before a game?" And they're like, "Yeah, but I don't think they're working on skill acquisition like right before the game." They're an NBA player. Pretty sure that's not what they're doing. They're just warming up, getting loose, relaxing, maybe getting activated, maybe just working on confidence, doing it in the easiest possible way. So they're just like, "Yeah, I'm amazing."
Warm up. Yeah. It's
Like
not
it's what
you're
they're
not
doing.
It's funny when people bring that up, because it's like I can either tell you're not a coach or maybe not a good coach, because you're not right before a competition or a tournament. Skill building should not be in your mind. That is the performance period. We are not looking like that's why camps exist. Camps are not the skill building time, it's the performance time. Your time off is typically your skill building, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, like the week leading up to the couple weeks leading up to tournaments, we're not giving people new skills. We're sharpening what they have and getting them into the performance mindset, right? So like when people are like, "Oh, well, yeah, they're shooting basketballs 100 times before." Okay, that tells me you don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Yeah, and you'd be like, "Are you behind the closed doors of what they're doing in their practices? Are you joking? You think that's..."
Yeah.
You're like, "Mm-mm." They're also a professional athlete who has their whole day every day to be practicing. And then, like, sure, you can't be effortful at your max the whole time. So you're going to have a scale of what you're doing, like what your intentions are for it. It's like so far from what people think. And then they don't realize the punchline is like, there's plenty of eco coaches in the NBA. I think the one that's been in making the rounds lately as one of the, I think it's the assistant coach for the Phoenix Suns. But like there's other ones, and yeah.
People think they know, they just don't know what it boils down to, right?
Yeah.
Um, it was actually really cool too. On Friday when I got to chat Greg up, I asked him, I'm like, obviously you're aware of my little Instagram thing. Like, have you seen a fair amount of my games? Yeah. I'm like, what do you think about them? Right? And he's like, to be quite honest, I usually don't comment on people's games online anymore because he said the thing I really need to like start and I've been working on personally is, am I commenting on things because there's something wrong with what's being done, or if it's just because it's against how I like what my preference is, right? So like for my games, he said, you always have really good opposing tasks, right? They're well built, they're working for you, they're fantastic. He had nothing bad to say. He said, just my personal preference is I like to be short and snappy and keep it under 90 seconds, right? Which I also like to do, but I'm assuming he probably saw one of my classes where it was like there was a brand new guy in the room, so I had to kind of build the context of it first, right?
Yeah.
But that was the only thing that he brought up is like, I just like to be short and snappy. I like to be quick, lay it down, don't give him much detail. None of this, like you could do this or you could do this, or you could just, no, this is what we're looking to do, go, right? But he's like, if you don't do that and you're a little bit more wordy, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not how I prefer to use it, right? So he is really trying to like remove what's right and wrong and what's like preferential to him. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that was cool for me to hear too. It's always nice to get like feedback on how a guy's doing, right? Because again, I think a lot of people reached out to Greg for help throughout the times, or like reach out to other people, and I kind of just stammered on my own for a long time, right? And then just threw it out to the world on a stupid Instagram.
It's very brave.
Like,
very brave.
hopefully I don't get torn apart, but it's been good. Like Greg always says Josh Peacock is kind of a guy who keeps him in line in terms of stuff, right? And Josh is not afraid to hit me up too. Like we have chats, and yeah, same with Cal Jones. Called me out one time for using invariances, right? Because the community as a whole was using invariances a lot, right? And Cal's like, it's not necessary. Because like if something is invariant, that means it always has to be there. So why are we pointing it out? Just focus on task and effect, right? The invariant's a middle thing that you don't really need to. You don't need. It's just fluff.
Yeah, it's sort of
Right.
the thing you're probably going to be like designing around or understanding. That's the thing, but you don't need to
Communicate it.
say.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it's actually been really cool putting the games out, and like, yeah, I haven't had really any negative stuff. I'm on the right track, and it's nice to have people out there who are like can help guide as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've thought about starting to do. I'm in a different phase with the club now, where sort of growth is kind of a focus, and so trying to put some more effort into our YouTube and Instagram. Because I know it's important. A lot of times we put out little things, but not a ton of like. I've always sort of hated when someone's Instagram's just like, look at this cool move I can do. I'm like, great. I'm gonna be like, I'm more about like the culture, watching people, or what the games are.
Yep.
And often, even in our Instagram, like if there's a theme I'm gonna be on, I'll like pick whether it's that whatever videos I think are good, or some game show someone else's games, or show some solution to like an area we're working in, or that 1-800 like BJJ one.
Mm-hmm.
I really they're great. They're so good. To be like, oh, we're working front headlocks. To be like, here you go. Here's the 30 seconds on like the important things happening.
Yep.
And I don't say anything. I don't like message the team and say, by the way, watch this, we're working on it. I just like let it exist. And that's not really promoting the gym. So I realized I do need to put some more of us in the gym. So again, that big barrier to getting new people in is everybody probably just thinks it's like death club for men, and you're like, no, no, we have like women, we hang out, we listen to good music.
Yeah.
Here's the speed, just so they understand the culture and like what we're about and, can do it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So maybe you'll get a chance to critique some of mine. And it'll start with you talk too much.
It's if you're looking to like build membership through the Instagram, games for sure you can post, but like it's the culture.
Yeah.
Really highlighting the culture in the room and like showing like, hey, this is a room you want to be in, right? Like for my gym, I should probably do a better job at posting more for my gym. I post a lot more on this coaching page, right? But like I will put games out there a little bit, but I'll have people walk in all the time where it's like I've had someone come in from another gym from a big city and they have like 9 months of experience. And after the second game, they're like, is this how is the whole class going to be like this? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, this is fucking sick. This is so much better. All we did was like breaking it down to like drilling at the other place, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, man. Like, or we'll have people come in and they'll like kind of look flabbergasted. And I'll point out to them like, hey, before you came here, did you like look up what a jiu-jitsu class was on YouTube? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, a little bit different, hey? And they're like, yeah. Right? Because like people are smart. They'll go on YouTube. They're like, hey, what are the expectations? Like, what am I going into? And oftentimes they just see drilling and stuff, right? And then all of a sudden they come in. It's like I don't even really talk about the fact that we use the constraint-led approach or that we do jiu-jitsu differently for my gym. I just try and highlight the culture and like how people like the space, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we throw in games in there for sure because it just shows like, hey, man, that looks fun, right? So I'll do that a little bit as well. But yeah, I'd love to see. I always like to try and get more and more people to post their games and their classes and how their people interact with their games as well, because it's just interesting for me as a coach to see different perspectives on how someone might want to accomplish something through constraints or how their room picks up on it or just anything like that, right?
Yeah. Oh, that reminds me, there was one game that you had reposted, and I think it was one you did in the class, and it was that there was like a lot of conditions. It was like the basic, like get outside the knee or behind the knee, and then, win the line of the hips, get chest to chest. But it was the one where you had to go outside, then pass the legs outside the other side, then be like one leg behind the knee, other leg behind the knee. And then once you've done those four things in whatever order they happen, then you can go in. I'm going to try that one tonight. Because I was like, oh, I hadn't really, I've done some things where there's some conditions or some tasks, but like not that much. And I was like, oh, I wonder what'll happen.
Yeah, that one's a lot, right? Like I play that more in probably an advanced room, but you can play it in a beginner room too, because they might not have a good ability to make connections. Because where I found with that game was if you can make solid connections, it kind of shuts it down a little bit, right? That's where I kind of succeeded, I guess. But yeah, like that's the cool thing. Like I've seen someone else post a game that was similar to that kind of an idea where it's like, I want you to capture one ankle on both sides and one knee on both sides. So they kind of phrased it as like Pokemon, you got to catch them all, right? So once you get the left ankle, you can't go for the left ankle again. You got to go get the right ankle or the right knee or the left knee, right? So then you end up in a game where it's like you only need the right foot. And what do? That right foot's way back and they're keeping it away, trying to game it, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, being able to scale it like that, like you could have the more, like if you have a big skill differential, you could have the more advanced player have to meet all of those conditions first before they can continue. And it makes it harder for them. That's a good thing, right?
Yeah, I was thinking about what it would lead up to that, and it would be, some less complex drills, and then, or while I'm doing something less complex, it might be like for my purple and brown belts, be like, okay, you guys need to do all the things,
Yep.
I'm going to try one of those too. We'll see. Sunday nights are a weird day for a class. I think again with our constraints of where we are, it's like that's kind of why we do it. But I don't know how many places have a Sunday nighter jujitsu class. Most of us.
We have a Sunday. We have a class right now happening upstairs. We have like a 2 to 3:30 class for Sunday, but
Oh yeah,
that's it.
midday or yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to switch it to the morning or make it Saturdays. And then when because you get that, hey, I do jujitsu on a Saturday morning. And then when you're in a competition and it's Saturday morning, you're like, okay, it might make more sense. But yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The last one is maybe for like a future one is, I think maybe we talked about it last time, but still trying to work on how to, I guess it's a couple of things, how to encourage people to not, when they're passing the guard, especially in the gi, but in both, to like, I'll say start by like not using their hands to push the legs or push down on the legs or knees for a variety of reasons. And then maybe like getting them to attune to like when you can and when you can't, right? It's not like you can never push down on a knee, or you can certainly push down with a forearm or whatever, but just understanding when that affordance exists and when that's like a terrible idea. And then as a combination, the thing actually I realized, I started doing it by just saying you're not allowed to touch the legs with your hands. Like I'll start them in headquarters or butterfly, and be like, okay, you can pressure however you want. I want your upper body working on from the hips up on like whatever goals, and like whatever you want to do with your legs, you're going to have a legs versus legs fight was like one of the ways to do it, just to be like, get them doing, not using their hands, But then I also realized that teaching dexterity with the legs from guard, because we do a lot of like, you got to figure out how to use your legs like arms and make good connections. And we do it guarded all the time really well. But like, as we get closer and people want to often put their knees on the ground, and then they're like, oh, I don't understand how to move my legs anymore. Or like, I don't have any dexterity with my legs. And you're like, yeah, well, I mean, I think it's because you're like on your knees. Your legs can't move. But anyway, just trying to also like realize that, oh yeah, like we get way more opportunities if you're on your backs with your like feet up to like learn how to use your feet. But when you're like standing, it's a little bit different to go legs v legs. But put your shin on their shin or put your shin behind their knee is a good start. And you're never allowed to be on your knees. But anyway, like in that range of like that leg dexterity from the top and not using your hands to push, still trying to like refine that part of the top game, pinning, passing piece.
Yeah. Do you play with leg riding at all?
Like personally, I like only leg ride. I don't pass guards. I've pinned legs.
Okay. Do you do that in class? Like, have you gone through leg riding with them?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like if you did leg riding games and then like went into a guarded game, that might help incentivize them or have it in their head fresh of like, oh yeah, we can use our knees and shins to deal with knees and shins, right? Or even starting them in like a position where the bottom player has their hands tied up already so they can't directly touch, but they can still use elbows and knees to clear feet too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, even just reminding them, because that's that segmentation thing we were talking to in the phases. It's like you can do the segmenting the leg and getting by the leg, right? And be like, okay, cool, you got chest to chest, and then it's sort of terminal and it stops. Then maybe do another drill where you're past the legs, and even you're like, hey, don't let them get their legs back in front of you. That's not quite the same as saying, you know what, I know you're like past them, but like you're not done fighting them. You're not just like, hey, don't let the legs get back in front. Now, maybe change the focus to be like, I want you to continue fighting their legs with your hip, side, elbow, feet, leg, continue to fight the legs once you're past them. You still get a win condition. You know, maybe it's you have to turn their knees and feet so they're facing away from you, or you have to get something behind their knee, or which is a pretty good idea from there, or pin them, or whatever prompts. And like that is quite different than just saying, okay, so we did all that, so now we're by the legs. Hey, by the way, win condition, if they get their legs back in front of you, you lose. Which is good, but not the same as, okay, we're past the legs, we're working on other goals, but you're still having the other fight, because people can forget that.
You know what actually was an interesting thing that I picked up, and I loved it. At all of the classes that I went to, including the seminar, bottom player getting a closed guard was always a hard reset, like instant lose, right? Which I love because it's like Hayden was like, don't go into closed guard, that's a boring death. And even Greg was like, if bottom player can get to closed guard or stand up, that's their win, right? Then it was like consistent across the board of like, do not let them wrap their legs around your hips, right? So like, I like that as a win condition. Because, yeah, you can have a win condition of like, oh, yeah, just get your legs back in front of you. But that's also a really good opportunity, like you said, to blend that gray area of like maybe then I go to a leg ride or I keep fighting or whatever the case is. But then the hard reset could be closed guard, right? Because do we really want to end up in closed guard? Hell no, right?
No. Yeah, I always joke that, when I'm rolling against people, it's like, if I've pulled you into my closed guard, that means like you were threatening me, and I was like, well, I might lose, or I'm tired and I just need to just win, or I'm trying to prove some point or something. Like that's definitely. I was like, I'm not exploring now. I'm not. Now I'm just like, all right, hold on, close guard, and are we all having fun yet? No. Now we're not having fun, and I'm just gonna. I kind of know where this is gonna end. I'm sure everybody who's good at jiu-jitsu at some point sort of can admit that they're like, okay, safety blanket of close guard. Thank God.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. If I come to you inverted upside down with my feet upside down, trying to enter inverted K, I'm exploring. If I shoot into close guard, I'm like, you're getting good. You just got the better of me there. Hold on a second. 1 sec.
Yeah, it's amazing too. Like I saw this in the tournament yesterday. Like oftentimes people get to close guard and it's like, yeah, no one's ever going to leave the close guard, right? And I had times where like some of my athletes would get to close guard and it's like, okay, I know people's inclination is like, this is a good place to hang out, but it's like, you're down 2 points. Let's consider opening that guard and standing back up.
Yeah.
Right. And they're like, yeah, bet. Right. They were good for it. Made that space, got their legs in front of them, stood back up. Let's get some takedown points or whatever the case is, but let's not hang out here. If we can't submit or like make a sweep happen real quick and like, let's be real, you can hunker down inside someone's closed guard to prevent that pretty easily if you're up on points, right?
Yeah.
It's like, make space, get up, let's go.
Yeah, I have, like you probably know, like Rob Bernacki's got a very strong influence on me, and I'll like tell you the whole story of how we, met. But I just think very highly of him as an instructor, and he's not an eco guy. Rob, don't worry, I won't call you an eco guy on a podcast, but he understands both camps quite well. Mm-hmm. He's a well-read dude. And also, I did say this to Rob, but I was like, you know what? Like, even though we were talking about representations and mental models and all that, I was like, we can have a soft assembled platonic ideal of a thing as a thing in our head as we try to do something. That's fine. That's not the same as a motor control program. Do that, right? If we want to get all the way back to it, but I'll admit that. But the other thing is I think he still does this. He's like believes that like white belts, he doesn't. I don't think he lets his white belts play close guard when they're
Yeah,
losing.
I've heard that.
And I get it because it's like we're trying to learn to move our hips and leg dexterity and just coordinate everything, and that is like a hard place to do that. And so I followed that, or I would at least be like, okay, if you get there, like just try and move on, or like really de-emphasize it. But when you're talking about like white belt competitions or like a kids competition, it's like, well, there's a lot of close guard.
Yeah,
Just like
most
I
gyms are
said,
still
it's not like you're
operating on
saying
the
it's a bad, it's so powerful. It's just a hard teaching modality for the skills you want to develop. So, but I've realized now in this newer method, as long as you gamify close guard, and my first one is like, okay, like stop your partner from standing up, try get their hands on their mat. And then the third one is like, get on one of your hips. Like, just randomly, like, just see how you can get on one hip or the other.
Mhm.
Or it's always inside the elbows or outside the elbows and getting that angle. And then, and then when those movements become more of it, I'm like more at ease with being like, okay, we can do this more as long as we're working open guards as well. So sort of softened on that. And because I think the CLA allows you to be like, you're not going to get people to just go close guard and are like, ugh, and do nothing because they're grip fighting effectively. They know they want to get outside the elbow. All the games they've played are like, let's, be moving our hips. And so they'll get good at that and they will move.
Mhm. Yeah, especially with competition, because I think a lot of gyms are still operating on the idea that closed guard is a fundamental thing in jiu-jitsu, and they do a lot of work from there in terms of like, oh, triangle, arm bar, whatever, right? And it's like, yeah, those are hard to do though. Like,
Don't you find it hard now? Do you find this too? It's like you go to a tournament and you see that white or even like blue belt and they got the closed guard and they're trying to do their like triangle or armbar from guard, like in that model, and you're just like, what are you doing? Why
yeah.
the fuck would you try and get that arm? Other person's just like perfectly postured, or there's just like, or it might be somewhere middling, and like none of the conditions are there, and they're just like, well, armbar, and you're like, what are you doing?
Mhm.
I can't
Well,
watch.
especially because you go from such a good connected position, right? And then like oftentimes it's not set up very well, and you've introduced a scramble where you're on the bottom already. Meanwhile, you could have got under the elbow, outside the elbow, whatever, took a better position. Like get a better position and then work towards that where you're pinning someone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, just like trying to do the thing and be like, I don't think you understand how that thing works, or like what the conditions need to be, or the timing for that thing. You're just like, oh, I'm supposed to do a triangle from guard.
yeah. Again, it's like trying to get a square block and cram it into the circle hole, right? Like they're taught these things and they hyper fixate on it and they just try and make it emerge no matter what, but they're blind to every other potential, right? Just because of how they've been taught, basically.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Cool, cool. We just hit 2 hours. How's your time looking?
I had a day free. Is there anything else that you wanted to know about my trip, I guess? 'Cause that was kind of a big thing that you would.
Yeah, yeah. I thought. I mean, you got to do it already when you were sort of debriefed with your wife, but I just did think it was an interesting way to interact with that material to get you to explain it to me, so you get that other chance to do some learning by doing.
Yeah.
Um, to do that, and then just for me to get a chance to to get some of that learning as well. And I think we've
Mhm.
accomplished that. I got to find out the secret of what you guys are all working on. So I will also add that to my agenda of things to work on. It
Yeah.
was good. Um, I guess actually, yeah, it makes me think like my April looks pretty exciting for jujitsu. One is Rob is going back to his affiliate in Calgary to Affinity to do a 3 day camp. It's like 2 hour camp, like 2 hours a day on the last weekend in April. So I'm going to do my best to get to that. Um, so that'll be good. That's always good training, and they're a really good gym. Um, Although I did get super smooshed there last time, but that's okay. And and then before that, that podcaster who's I'm sorry, I forgot her name again, but the River Tiger, that coach and academic, and she's been on Rob Gray's lately. She's doing that sort of those notes for Turvy, that little study group thing they're doing. She's been in that, and I think her area of expertise is around affordances. And so she's got a free webinar, which is UK time, but it's like I think it's that last Wednesday in April. So I've signed up for that, and so that'll be like a couple hours interactive with some leading researchers, just understanding why affordances are so important. And then Rob Gray's seminar on the 30th with Scott Seawright and the gang who did that paper, which I'm really excited for. And I just think it's hilarious in the Eventbrite registration. They're like, this is not a debate. Do not sign up if you want to come and tell us why we're going to be talking like constructively together with people who are interested to do this.
Yeah.
It's like a funny misnomer, and it's a paywalled thing. I think it's $100 or something US, but
Yeah.
I think that'll be super worth it. So like 2 lectures or like webinars, and then like that little extra bit of training for me and the crew. That's pretty exciting. So I'm sure I'll have things to talk about in May. Oh yeah, and then May 3rd is that tournament, and then yeah, hey, I'm doing a lot of jiu-jitsu. Yeah.
It's good.
Oh, we extended our kids program through to another month, and we're extending down to 6-year-olds, which terrifies me. And
Ooh.
because I need to learn a new language, the language of analogy to a 6-year-old. Yeah, so there'll be a lot to talk about next little bit.
So with the kids program, you're bringing 6-year-olds. Like, what is the age group for that?
So I tried to start 9 to 12, and then I think we have like one 11-year-old, but everybody's really sort of 9 and 10. And so then I allowed to go down to like 8 and 7. And at 7, to me, they have the attention span. I can talk to them like an adult, more or less. So all those things, and body sizes were fine. So we're doing that. But now I have like a lot of people looking for that 6-year-old program. So I think I'll go 6, 7, or maybe 5, 6, 7. I don't know. 5-year-olds super terrify me, but like just the responsibility and the fact that like I don't have a huge toolbox of the right ways to keep them engaged. You know what I mean? And it's good. Luckily, my wife was like one of the best ski instructors in Intro West and Whistler Blackcomb for like 10 years, and she specializes 5 to 7-year-olds, so it's okay. We're just going to go through all our games, and she's going to, I'll simplify them even more for that age grade, and then also just use analogy way more, Like you were saying, like, hey, we don't ride turtles. Like, it's the turtle riding game. Instead of being like, okay, your goal is, anyway, making it their language. That's what I say. And then the responsibility of like littles is, like, I don't have kids, but I certainly understand the responsibility. I feel it probably too strongly. All the parents are like, just relax. You're good.
Yeah.
Just relax. Yeah, so I think do you think that's good? Like 5, 6, 7, and like 7 being the break, or like maybe with the 7-year-olds, it's like you can pick based on the 7-year-old whether they're more comfortable with the younger set or the older set.
I do 7 and up.
Yeah.
And like I have some who are younger because they grandfathered in from when I did kids. But I don't do like 6 and under anymore, aside from those ones who were grandfathered in. Or once in a while, I'll have someone really, really, really interested. And I'm like, I'll do a trial and we'll see if they're a good fit. If not, we'll try again next year. Just because I don't have the capacity to do split classes, and having like 6 and unders with the older group is tough.
Yeah.
It's very different. Like that's where I learned how to build attention spans, is when I did the kids class, because my first day was like a disaster, and then I had talked to Kabir and he's like, oh, you get to build their attention span, homie. Like that's where, like, we have red squares in our gym in terms of like the floor is black, but we have like a ring of the red mats. So like with those young kids, it's like, okay, we're gonna play a game for 30 seconds. Then we're gonna break for some water. Then you're gonna find a red square and sit like a black belt, right? And then you do it again, and that might be your first week, right? Or like I like to set the clock to count up, and then the first time I see someone's attention break and they start going crazy, okay, water break, right? And you build in the hard reset of sitting like a black belt, and then like really rewarding them for that behavior so they want to do it, right? And then you slowly build that time of the games, where you might start with 30 seconds and the next time is 35 and then 40, and then you just continue to build that until hopefully you get to like 3 minutes, because that's a workable time, right? But you need a consistent group for that. And the nice thing is, once you have that set structure and the kids have that understanding, when you have a new kid come in, they police it for you.
Yeah.
Because the kid wants to conform and they see all the kids doing it, so they have an easier time doing so. It's just the initial like month plus is kind of hard for sure. But actually someone asked Greg about this too with kids, and he's like, yeah, you got to split it up. Like they're different. Like that kind of 7 and under should be another group. And then like that 7 or 8 plus to like 12 or 14 should be a different group. And then otherwise they're in adults. And he actually suggested the same thing with having a spot on the mat and building in hard resets, which is really interesting to hear him, because he doesn't teach kids anymore, but he used to. But him having the same like ideas like Kabir, and like, yeah, it works really well. So that's what I would recommend.
That's very, very good advice. Thank you. It's like basically probably what I needed to hear. And yeah, it'll be tricky. Like we're just in this, anyway, something came up that while we had the demand and we're like, okay, we got to figure out how to do the younger set. Something happened where like a group in the community asked if I could like help a particular family that I was very motivated to try help, because again, we're not for profit. I'm not here to be like, I'm the best jiu-jitsu guy. I'm just like, want to serve the community, really is like my stick. So like no one in my area has to worry about me trying to like be the big dog jiu-jitsu guy, because there's a couple of people who are like that. There's one guy like that. Everybody else is great. Feel threatened, but they don't. Anyway, whatever. We're not going to do an MMA fight to be like, who's better at jiu-jitsu? And be like, dude, I'm just trying to like serve the community through this sport that I happen to get good at, and I happen to be a coach. I have the capacity, so this is how I serve, and get to do my favorite thing every day also. So I was kind of like thrown into it, and they've just started, and now I've got this like one little who's like into grappling. I'm like, oh dude, you're 6. You were like different than these 7-year-olds, and this is hard to keep the room together or keep you together. And I'm just very motivated. I was like, there's no chance I'm giving up on this kid. Like, so I'm going to have to figure it out, Do
you have assistant coaches who help you?
Yeah.
That's huge. Lean on them. Sometimes, especially like when we have a newer kid, or maybe their attention is like inherently bad that day, I'll partner the young kid with like an adult or an assistant, because then they can kind of like give them the care and attention they need, while then I can deal with the rest of the room who also deserve the care and attention, but they have a better frame of mind or attention span to deal with it too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's
So,
so different. Like even Kabir's, advice about like how he deals with like behavior and attention, and he's just like, oh, you can't like give it energy and like change your attention for the kid who's like spinning around in circles or whatever, not listening.
mhm.
You just ignore them, right? And there's some nuance to that, but and the older kids that works really well. If someone's there
Yep.
or some kid's like, hey, they don't want to do it, I go, great, just just get off the mat until you want to come wrestle,
Yep.
and they're like, what? I
Yeah.
was like, nah. And then whether they get off the mat or not, I just don't. I'm just like, hey, let me know when you want to do this again.
Yep. 100%. I
Hey,
do that all the time too.
everybody
If
ignore
kids,
them, and it works really well. But like, you can't like, it's not the same at 5 and 6. I'm discovering, and just here, I was gonna try doing both at once. I was like, ugh,
yeah,
maybe not.
I would refrain. Yeah, I would refrain because it's unfortunately it's going to kind of like devalue and make your program for the older kids worse because you're going to have to corral the young kids. So it's easier just to keep them separated.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. Maybe we'll just deal with the one right now, just because it's a special case, and figure.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like if it's only one in the class, like I do have some 5 and 6 year olds in my class, but again, they were grandfathered in, so the expectations are pretty clear with them, and the parents understand that too. So like I'm not um, changing the class for them; they conform to the class.
Yeah,
But like to bring new ones in, that's always going to be tough.
yeah. Yeah, and I get it. It's definitely not linear. Like when I think of the older kids, like I was very worried about 7-year-olds, But like
Mm.
the 7-year-olds I have where like parents were like, no, they like talk about this all the time. They've seen the videos, they're so into it. Like, can we try? I'm like, okay. And as it turns out, like just because they're into it,
Yeah,
they're looking forward to it. They want to do jujitsu and wrestle. So it's like, it's fine. They come and that's what happens. And occasionally you notice that they're a 7-year-old and you're like, cool, be a 7-year-old. I'm not gonna be a drill sergeant. Be like,
yeah,
do you wanna, we're gonna play
yeah,
these games and get good. And then it's like the 9 or 10-year-old who's like kind of into it, and they're the ones that are the problem. You'd be like, I've got these two like, yeah, minis who are just learn so fast and are so dialed because they just like it.
yeah.
So
That's huge. You can generally tell when someone's there because they want to be there or because their parents want to be there.
yeah,
Huge.
yeah. Okay, well, thank you for that advice.
Okay.
I knew we'd make it to 2 hours for sure. I really do value the conversations. I think I dropped less f bombs than last time, so that's good. I'm
Oh, I made up for
I
it.
more or less steered clear of controversy. Shouldn't get dojo stormed right away.
People are pretty good. Honestly, I think too.
I'm not too worried about
Um,
it.
no, but even for myself, like I've had death threats legitimately. Like it's been, but some of the stuff I put out there has been spicy, and there's some nut jobs out there, right? With the podcast, it's nice because yeah, it's long form, so you can like kind of speak, so people can get a better idea of like who I am. Because a lot of people, I think, just see that one whiteboard video I did, and they fucking hate me, and they don't realize that, like, yeah, like I'm gonna poke and I'm gonna be spicy once in a while, but like I'm not that bad.
Yeah.
Kind of a dick sometimes, but I'm not that bad.
Well, you got to get the clicks, I guess.
Yeah, yeah,
I think that you put out good content, that's got real value, and it's like, yeah, it's fine. Like I think Cal Jones said this. He's like, everyone's like, oh, you're so nice and so good, and like a good conversationalist and a good educator and softer spoken. So this is all good. And he's like I am in a fight sport. Like, don't worry. Like, I don't mind a little conflict. Like, I'm a little bit competitive. We all are. Like, at some point, you're like, okay, like, sure, let's touch each other. Let's find it.
yeah.
It's no problem. So yeah, we don't have mat enforcer culture. I don't like believe in that at all. I think it's very toxic. Like, there's better ways to shape behavior, but in the event that we do get dojo storms, I just have some giant, strong, great jiu-jitsu guys. I can be like, here's the products. Be like, it's not me.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
Yeah.
for who I am, I'm like pretty good. But I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess if you want to challenge the gym, like, here's the 250-pound brown belt.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Now, the reality is that the internet's a really funny thing where people can say whatever they want. But when it comes down to it in person, very rarely will they say a damn thing.
No.
Is what it is. And it is what it is, right? Like, yeah, goofballs.
Well, we're just getting legit. We're getting our new rash guards from BC Kimonos. Should be here in a couple of weeks. So
I saw
we'll have
that.
one of
That's
those
awesome.
ready for you when you get there.
Heck yeah.
There's no skulls. Nothing says tap out. There's no references to war on them at all. There's
Yeah.
like trees and mountains and people like doing jujitsu in the trees.
Very peaceful.
It's very beta cuck over here. Okay, now that I've said how non-aggressive I have, I'm all like, stop for another half an hour and let me get spicy, but I won't. Yeah, anyway, thanks so much, Dylan. I love chatting with you. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, we'll regroup in a little while after these other things have happened, or some light bulb goes on, or I need your help again.
No worries, bro.
Okay.
Thanks for the chat.
All right. See you, Dylan.
See you.